Diana.
Hello.
Welcome to Trump 100, Diana.
Thanks very much.
Just back from Canada. How was that?
But it was lovely, that brief moment that we spent there before all Trump's plans changed and the tariff threats were dropped. Nice to see you, Martha. I'm sorry I missed you here the other day.
I was going to text you to say, did you want to go for a drink? And then we ended up doing something. We ended up recording something else.
Being busy.
Yeah.
I'm Mark Stone.
I'm Mark Kelner.
And I'm Diana Magnay.
And on day 18 of Trump 100, has the White House rolled back on Donald Trump's plans to permanently relocate Gazan Palestinians?
Can Donald Trump ban trans athletes from competing in the next Olympics?
And is all this news part of a plan to stop his critics from fighting back?
Mark, you're still at the White House, remarkably. Have you even left? Can we try and get you accommodation there?
I have left. I did leave briefly last night after the whirlwind day that was, and I was back today for another interesting day, doing the podcast not in the studio but outside on Pebble Beach, as it's known, which, you know what, feels a wholly different place from the Biden administration. Pebble Beach is this area right outside the West Wing, which I'm next to, and that is where, obviously, Donald Trump is spending all his time, and this is where the world's media are gathered, and it is much, much busier than it used to be when I was here on the Biden days, largely because, honestly, he didn't do a great deal. He didn't do a great deal of media events, and it is very different with the Trump White House. And this area outside the White House has become kind of a hubbub of activity where you see Trump officials wandering around. You can actually mingle with these people and get one or two lines from them. So it's a really interesting place to be, but it is jolly cold.
And the first big set piece of the day, Mark, was that White House press conference with Donald Trump's new press secretary, Caroline Leavitt. How did that go? Gaza, presumably, the main issue.
Yeah, it was the main issue because of that stunning double announcement a few hours earlier from Donald Trump, where he said, first of all, that all Palestinians in Gaza should be permanently relocated elsewhere, that somebody, he didn't say who, should build a beautiful place for them, as he said, somewhere else, and they should be permanently relocated. That in and of itself was a huge announcement. Then came the news conference last night where he said that America would take ownership of Gaza. So following all of that, there was this news conference where we hope to get a little bit more clarity.
The historic proposal for the United States to take over Gaza, announced by President Trump last night, underscores this commitment. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. President Trump is an outside-of-the-box thinker and a visionary leader who solves problems that many others, especially in this city, claim are unsolvable.
I don't know what you both thought, but I thought that there was a significant rowback of at least one of those two announcements by Donald Trump, because Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary, was talking about temporary relocation of Gazans and not permanent relocation of Gazans, as Donald Trump had said a little earlier.
I thought what was interesting there was the fact that, it is a rowback from this long-term ownership position, which Donald Trump talked about yesterday. But this whole thing that he said at the end about a Mideast Riviera, and when he was pushed on that question of where the Palestinians would live and whether they would return, last night he said, well, the peoples of the world will come back there. And sort of as an afterthought, oh yeah, and the Palestinians, Palestinians who want to might too, which is kind of crazy because if you think about if his plan came into reality and they were somehow relocated in a refugee camp somewhere for years and years as this building project of his was built, how could any Palestinian who's lived like that for all that time possibly afford to buy the real estate of the Mideast Riviera, the Gazan Dubai of Trump's dreams? It's wholly unrealistic. But also Caroline Leavitt said today, all peoples who want to return there can return. And that to me spoke of all of those Israeli settlers who were kicked out in 2005 who claim Gaza as their own. This is all the kind of right-wing terminology which we've heard from the right-wingers in Israel for a long time. And now it's just coming out of the mouths of Donald Trump and his press secretary. Mark, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that Caroline Leavitt used the phrase that he pulled it out of the box. And I think it seems to me that it was a box that only he had access to. I don't think anyone else, or very many people at all, were expecting that this announcement was going to come. Indeed, one of the questions in the briefing was this plan written down anywhere? Because if in any sort of governmental orbit, if you have a proposal to do something, to put something in place, there is clearly a working group around that, and they put together a paper, which then becomes something that they then present as an option. But in this instance, she was asked, so was there a paper, was this written down? I thought it was quite funny what she said. Was there a written draft of this plan, was the question. Her answer was, the plan was written in the president's remarks last night as he revealed it to the world. There you go. It sounded to me like, not very many people knew about this.
Yeah, the US still seems to be saying it will take over Gaza, albeit now apparently temporarily. Did Caroline Levitt give any idea, any more insight into how that will work?
No, in a word. She was asked repeatedly whether it meant American boots on the ground, American soldiers, how that fitted in with Donald Trump's worldview spanning back many, many years, that America shouldn't be involving itself in faraway conflict. There is the issue of ownership of Gaza, of occupying Gaza. No real clarity or movement following what Donald Trump said on that from Caroline Levitt. But on the other issue of where Palestinians should go and whether it should be temporary or permanent, she was very much of the view that it was a temporary relocation and not a permanent one. Whatever difference that may be, because if you are Palestinian and you're being moved out of Gaza, you are not going to believe that it is only going to be temporary. But as I was saying a bit yesterday on the podcast, I wonder if this is just all part of a grand negotiating plan. He is putting something out there that could be that is probably absolutely never going to happen, but because it's Donald Trump, maybe it actually will happen. Maybe they will occupy Gaza. But he freaks everyone out, mainly freaks countries in the Middle East out, who then feel, okay, well, we've got to stop this from happening, so we will have to do more ourselves to be able to relocate Gazans temporarily or to rebuild Gaza as well. So perhaps all part of a grand negotiation.
Interestingly, I've been watching quite a lot of network cable television overnight, and a lot of people on the right of the party are defending the president's plans, saying, he's a visionary, that things clearly aren't working out in Gaza at the moment, and that he's offering some form of solution. I don't know whether they're thinking that potentially we'll have big gleaming gold Trump towers in Gaza or what, but their defence of him is at least he is putting forward some proposition.
If I can interrupt for 1 second, just to give you an idea, as I was saying earlier on, about the activity that goes on here on Pebble Beach outside the White House. Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, has just turned up here and is doing an impromptu news conference, no doubt talking about migration. Martha, that's obviously something you've covered so much.
Yeah, and I suspect also Greg Abbott celebrating the other big diary moment of the day, which is Donald Trump's signing of this executive order on trans participation in women's sport.
Yes, that's the reason we were here today, was to witness the signing of another executive order, a subject which was consistent throughout the campaign trail, the election campaign, controversial throughout the campaign, the idea that transgender women should be able to compete in women's sports. It's all part of the woke ideology that the Trump administration says has infested America throughout the Biden term, and they are trying to roll all that back. And so in the past half an hour, we've just witnessed in a packed East Room, the same room, incidentally, where those Gaza comments were made last night. It's been transformed today into a location where Donald Trump signed an executive order, and citing common sense, he signed the order, which is titled "No Men in Women's Sports Executive Order," and it seeks to ban biological men who have transitioned from competing in women's sports and entering women-only sports facilities.
But all of that ends today because with this executive order, the war on women's sports is over.
So a huge change to that particular issue across the United States.
There was quite a strange moment as well at the end, Mark, I saw, where he surrounded himself by lots of young girls as he was signing this executive order, and he was saying, isn't this a nice signature, and is this a 10 out of 10?
I thought he was going to start throwing those pens there.
They're clearly using this, though, aren't they, as, to bolster his image in parts of America where people do see the issue of trans rights as being out of control.
Yeah, it was a genuinely impromptu moment. He was on the stage, sitting at the desk, signing the order, and behind him it was I guess probably maybe 80, 90 women and girls, some of them in their sports kit, who have wanted for so long for this executive order to be signed. And as he signed the executive order, he sort of turned around and said, "Come and join me." And all the girls, teenagers, young girls, jumped down. Massive moment for them inside the White House in the East Room, surrounded him as he signed that executive order. So it felt impromptu, and it was a photo op for sure that will go down very well across vast swathes of America. It will shudder progressive liberals who feel that their rights and the direction they want America to go in is being rowed back with dramatic action, executive action.
And all about being seen to deliver on his election campaign promises, isn't it? He ran his 2024 campaign regularly referring to trans people as men, pledging to ban them from women's sports. And on Inauguration Day, he signed another executive order saying that the US government would only recognise two genders, male and female.
Interestingly, when I was in Canada earlier this week, I was speaking to the mayor there of the town of Windsor, Ontario. And he said, obviously, nobody likes Trump at the moment here. But I'll tell you what, one thing that they do really get behind is what he's doing on the, common sense, in inverted commas, on this anti-wokery front. And that is why you're seeing this huge shift in Canada away from the Liberal Party and Justin Trudeau and everything that he stands for, and towards the Conservative Party, who kind of align with Donald Trump on this kind of measure, and of course a whole load of other things. But we heard Caroline Levitt talking today about how incredibly popular on a bipartisan basis all this sort of anti-woke agenda was that Donald Trump has made such a signature of his first 2.5 weeks. As you say, it sends shockwaves through, those who have liberal instincts, but a lot of people really like this stuff.
Yeah, it's the confliction of Trump, isn't it? You can find much of what he stands for to be very appealing. But then he does things like impose massive tariffs on other countries, which will clearly have a huge impact. Or the Palestinians is your issue, then that clearly worries you as well. So it's a conflicted presidency for many, I think.
Yeah, I think there is actually a common sense conversation certainly to be had about transgender women competing in women's sport. I did a lot of work on this as a sport correspondent in a past life, and I particularly remember an interview I did with a transgender cyclist, a woman named Rachel McKinnon, who had just won a world championship at masters level. She had gone through puberty as a male, and there is scientific evidence, research. There was a particular study by a Swedish university to suggest that if you do go through puberty as a boy, then you still retain those musculoskeletal advantages even after taking hormone suppressants, so even after reducing your testosterone levels. So there is a conversation to be had about balancing fairness, about balancing the right for women to have their own category and have an equal chance of success, with also the rights of trans women to be included in sport. It is an incredibly complicated issue. It's a thorny issue, but it is certainly one worth talking about. Although, having said that, I do think that perhaps the Trump administration, this is all part of a wider war on woke, rather than necessarily a concern for women, being able to compete fairly in sport.
How big an issue do you think, I don't know the answer to this, but how big an issue in America is the transgender issue? Is it the case that they have made it feel like a bigger issue and a bigger problem and something that more people are worried about than actually it should be?
I think it's definitely overblown, but it certainly is the case that there have been athletes in the Olympics who have won medals, who have gone through male puberty and so retain some of the advantages of having done that. I think it is an issue. I think it is definitely overstated to, try and
Rile people up.
to rile people up. Yeah.
And it's an easy win, which is why Trump is talking all about how the new Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, has managed to gain lots of new recruits now, because he's going to remove what Trump calls the woke lunacy from the army, which is also a trans debate that Trump can sort of prove that he's winning on.
LGBT plus advocacy groups and parents of trans children have launched legal action against Trump's two-gender policy. So it'll be interesting to see the sports world reaction to this latest executive order.
What else have we got to talk about?
We've got into a bit of a routine on the podcast where we do a wrap-up of other events that have happened each day. There is so much happening, though. We're not able to even touch on some of the incredibly important stories like the ongoing Elon Musk-led purge of the federal government, the ongoing tariff war with China, El Salvador offering to hold US deportees in their prisons. But Diana, you think there might be a reason for this news overload?
Yes, the idea that he is flooding the zone, doing much so quickly that no one has the time or space to react. That was the old Steve Bannon line. The journalists are the enemy, flood the zone so that they don't know what to report on or how. He used an expletive that I won't use on Trump 100. But yeah, that's what we've seen. That's why, keep it clean. That's why I've had to come and help you guys out, and still there's so much to report on. What is Elon Musk doing every day in the USAID? 10,000 jobs gone. We've got voluntary redundancies or buyouts being offered to the entire CIA.
It's hard to focus on what exactly is important. I mean, Donald Trump hasn't been on reality television for years, but it's like he's exec producing his own presidency, and he's trying to think of a storyline for every single day. And sometimes it's 3-4 storylines in the day. I was reading as well that it's sort of not just journalists that are struggling to keep up. The White House stenographers who are responsible for transcribing his remarks, they're looking for reinforcements because there's not enough of them, because he's speaking so much, hours and hours and hours each day that they're having to transcribe.
I wonder how many words you guys have said on this podcast so far.
That's a great question. Anyway, I think that's about it for today. A reminder to send us all your questions about Trump, about Gaza, about his plans for the US government, tariffs, anything else you want to know. Ask us and we will do our very best to answer them on Sunday's Q&A episode.
You can email us on trump100@sky.uk.
And if you don't already, please do follow Trump 100 wherever you're listening. And why not write a review while you're there?
Thanks for joining us for day 18 of Trump 100. See you tomorrow for day 19.
See you then. Bye.
Bye-bye.